Welcome to E-Commerce Fast Lane, the podcast show to help you build, launch, grow, and scale a wildly successful e-commerce company. Listen to real conversations with proven practical strategies and success stories. Learn how to generate more traffic, more sales, more profit, and customer lifetime value for your Shopify store. And now, your host and e-commerce entrepreneur, Steve Hutt.
This episode is brought to you by Caro, the #1 Shopify app for influencer marketing. Caro is a Shopify app that discovers all the influencers who are your brand's customers, email subscribers, and fans. Now imagine an influencer with 1 million followers was to make a purchase from your Shopify store. Would you know about it? Caro makes sure that you do. And unlike other influencer platforms, Caro is built for trust and transparency. And they help you find influencers that are genuinely interested in your brand so that you're not scrolling through countless social accounts just to find the right partners. Let Caro do the heavy lifting and find influencers that are best for your brand. And Caro also helps you execute your influencer marketing every step of the way. They make communication and product distribution easy so you can pick the right influencers and create meaningful partnerships. And right now, Caro is free for all Shopify stores. So why not try it out and see who you find? Now, after you install the app, Caro will alert you whenever a new influencer engages with your brand so that you can communicate and continue to build your list of influencers over time. To get started, you can visit getcaro.com or you can search for Caro in the Shopify App Store. That's Carro, and discover which influencers already love your brand. Hey there, it's Steve, and welcome back to the E-Commerce Fastlane podcast. Now, if this is your first time listening, this is an e-commerce show where we have honest and transparent conversations about building and thriving with your store, powered by Shopify or Shopify Plus. And this is actually the final episode for 2019, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. Now, remember, new episodes are available each week with your favorite podcast player through iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Or you can also sign up online at ecommercefastlane.com and be notified when new shows are being released. My guest on today's episode is Chris, the co-founder and president of Convictional, and they're a modern B2B trade enablement network. Now, stores on Shopify and Shopify Plus, they are now using Convictional to rapidly expand their product assortment, launching new product categories, and most importantly, growing revenue, and all without taking any inventory risk. Now, here's how they do it. This is the secret sauce. Convictional provides the platform that enables online stores like you on Shopify or Plus to source, onboard, and integrate with third-party sellers who then manage the inventory and fulfill the orders for your consumer. So you don't have to have inventory. They do the work, but you have the product on your website. So it's very interesting. If you don't have any third parties to work with, that's also fine because they have a growing selection of products and offerings that are available to what you currently sell. And I'd say almost a curated network of third-party brands. Basically, they're helping source and finding and helping these brands. And they're building an ecosystem, basically, of third-party sellers who have great products and are looking for others to sell these products. So if you've ever wondered how you can expand your product catalog and easily drive more customer lifetime value, this is a show that you definitely don't want to miss. So let's jump in and learn more. So hi, Chris. Welcome to E-Commerce Fastlane.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, being at the end of 2019, I thought it was perfect timing to have this particular episode on. And the reasons why is because I feel that once the Black Friday, Cyber Monday holiday kind of rush is over with, people now, as entrepreneurs and brand owners, are now trying to think about, what am I going to do in 2020? These are, there are high-level concepts that people are thinking about right now. And I think one thing that Convictional offers, which we're going to dig into in a few minutes, is how it's able to expand your current catalog of complementary products without a lot of, as I mentioned at the top of the show, without having these inventory risks is one side of it. And then the other side that we're going to talk about is that, hey, you have some great products, and wouldn't it be great to be on a seller network and have your products available for others to retail. And then it shows up in your admin and you fulfill these orders on behalf of others. It's very, very, very interesting, very high tech it sounds like, but it's amazing how it all comes together. That's why I have you on the show today. So
awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk on a high level first. We've talked a little bit about the beginning here, but on a high level, let's talk about what does Convictional do and what sort of problem are you trying to solve for Shopify store owners?
So Convictional makes it possible for online retailers to source, onboard, and integrate with third-party brands. And so there's really two sides to this, but we do this by connecting those online retailers to a network of suppliers and brands who manage inventory and really ship those products and orders directly to the end consumer. On the other end, we have a supplier network where we invite a curated assortment of brands and suppliers into the network and then broker introductions to them to online retailers who might be a good fit to offer their products to the consumers that they're ultimately marketing to.
Right.
So there's really two sides to this. And we know for Shopify and Shopify Plus stores that having more products on your store, on your shelf, leads to more revenue opportunities. And so Convictional is really enabling those stores to expand deeper into new categories or into ones that are already working, to test new products and drive more revenue, all without having to worry about fulfillment or inventory costs.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of the whole shop to look popularity that's on right now, especially on fashion brands. And imagine if you're able to find other sellers that have complementary items. Let's say, you're a fashion brand, but you don't have accessories. Imagine finding a great accessory company on your platform and then being able to have these available in your store and then having a shop to look functionality, add all the items to the cart. And even though you can fulfill your own, you'll soon learn that these other orders that are not necessarily owned by you, they're just on your store, they actually show up in the original seller's admin for fulfillment for your customers. Really exciting stuff.
Exactly. And I think you nailed one of the key value propositions of Convictional from a technology capability perspective, which is that there's really no friction involved for a seller. So in this case, a brand on Shopify that wants to offer their products through more online retailers. Let's call those guys sellers. And for buyers, and those are the online retailers who are actually selling products on behalf of third-party brands. There's no friction involved, and that's because the platform automates the hard stuff and those hard activities that typically would require teams of IT people and an entire operations SWAT crew to automate are things like vendor onboarding and integration. And we sync key pieces of data between these stores like product information, inventory, orders, fulfillments, and payouts. And the end goal here is to automate and abstract away all of the complexity involved. So online stores on Shopify can reduce CapEx, drive more revenue, and really make it easy for third-party brands and suppliers to work with you.
Right. So let's talk about the founder's journey. I always find it exciting to understand why people build what they build. What you believe, I guess, uniquely positions you maybe and your co-founder, number one, to have the desire, and number two, to have the expertise to want to create this platform.
Yeah, I think we have an unusually good story that makes us qualified to tackle this problem. And you certainly don't see the problems unless you're working within this industry. And so the story behind Convictional really began back when my co-founder worked at GNC when he was like 17 years old. GNC is a large global supplements retailer. And the hardest problem that they faced at the time when Roger, my co-founder, worked there was in selling products on their e-commerce site from third-party suppliers. And so once Roger was tasked with growing the Canadian e-commerce business for GNC, he basically saw that it was going to be a nightmare to onboard those third parties. At the time, if you wanted to dropship products from third-party sellers, you basically needed either legacy EDI, which stands for Electronic Data Interchange, and it was invented, I believe, in the 1960s, or basically use a dog's breakfast of flat files. And so subjecting those third-party vendors to that kind of EDI experience or that hodgepodge of flat files and once-a-day inventory dumps is just a non-starter for both sides. And they ended up having to build a team around this effort just to manage that part of the retailer's operation. Now, the next part of the story actually happens if you fast forward a few years from there. Roger and I actually met while working together at Shopify. So we worked on the Shopify Plus team, and we were both entrepreneurially inclined, and we wanted to start a company helping Shopify brands and suppliers, but didn't really know where to start. And so once we left, we started talking to hundreds of merchants and brands. And by and large, they kept telling us the things that we already knew, which was that they wanted more products to sell, they wanted someone else to manage the inventory, and they wanted an automated way to enable those third-party sellers. And so the opportunity there was quite striking, because if they could achieve this, then they would be able to bring those customers back for repeat purchases, offer more to them, and basically completely de-risk their business model. So that's, really the impact that Convictional is having to customers. And, since then, we've been able to raise $2.2 million in venture capital. That's been from a syndicate of some incredible investors, including Y Combinator, which is based out of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's exciting. I remember reading that on BetaKit. Congrats on that. Pretty exciting to be in that program and, and number one, and then also get venture capital too. This whole non-friction thing is very interesting to me. And I think that's the challenge that a lot of people have. They're worried about, will it interrupt the overall workflow? And we're going to chat in a few minutes about how simple that actually can be with your network of third-party sellers that want to have their products available. And then on the other side, people that want to expand their assortment. And so let's keep that thought about the no frictions. I think that's an interesting value prop. So Chris, can you share a quick story about, or two, if you have them? I'm assuming you're working with a lot of customers right now, but those that are using Convictional, is there anything you can share today?
Absolutely. So one of our favorite customers is a company called The Helm. And The Helm approached Convictional because they were looking to start an online store for women-owned brands. One thing that we've noticed in e-commerce retail specifically is that it's trending towards values-based purchases. And so The Helm approached us at a time when I think that consumers were also recognizing that this is important. And so they wanted to create a Shopify store dedicated to women entrepreneurs and their products. They had this idea of wanting to highlight the innovations and brands that were created by women entrepreneurs and connect their products to consumers, but didn't really know how to navigate that process operationally. And so using Convictional, they recently launched and have onboarded over 100 vendors. They have over 8,000 SKUs listed, and they've unlocked new product categories like beauty, fashion, home and wellness. And this is all without taking on any inventory risk or fulfillment costs. So Convictional is facilitating the enablement experience between The Helm and over 100 vendors at this point and thousands of active SKUs. If you were to do this without Convictional, you would need a team of people, probably many existing vendor relationships. So you'd need to be an insider of sorts. And you would basically need an entire IT setup dedicated to the cause. And that actually magnifies as you onboard vendors, because historically with legacy EDI, every time a vendor would get up and running with an online retailer, large or small, it would be an IT project for the vendor. Now with Convictional, The Helm can just simply take the email address of the vendor that they'd like to onboard, send them an email invite, and it installs an app on their Shopify store. And from there, we're able to just pull through inventory, product information, and send orders back into the systems that those vendors are already using.
Convictional really does help a lot of Shopify and Shopify Plus stores become almost multi-brand marketplaces, so to speak. And, you obviously have the technology now that will really help automate the operations that are involved. Like, it's really exciting how it can show up in an admin of the supplying company's Shopify store to fulfill on behalf of somebody else that has it in their store. I think it's really interesting tech that's available to do that sort of thing. So what happens though, let's suppose that a store doesn't have brands that they would like to onboard, are you able to help them find brands?
It's a great question, Steve. And the answer to that is yes. So very early on in Convictional's journey, Shopify stores actually began asking us if we could connect them to brands and suppliers that were already in the network. And we kind of looked at them and said, what network? They liked our technology, but they also wanted our expertise in helping them source relevant brands and suppliers that could be a fit with the kinds of products they were already selling. So if you're selling, shoes, for example, and you have a loyal audience of consumers who buy from you, then perhaps there's an opportunity to also combine that with other forms of fashion, like apparel. And so they would ask us for recommendations of suppliers who were complementary to their existing product assortment, but then give them that breadth that customers really were longing for. And so we ended up launching Seller Network, which is a curated assortment of third-party sellers that we can readily connect any Shopify store to. So it's not a mass marketplace, but rather we vet both sides. We ensure the suppliers can ship within 24 to 48 hours, and typically they're based in North America. And from there, we broker an introduction between the supplier and the brand that could be relevant for the supplier's products. An example customer story here is a company called The September. They're based in Toronto. They're on Shopify. And The September actually has a hybrid inventory and dropship model. So Convictional's platform today powers their dropship assortment, which includes some incredible brands like Rebecca Minkoff and Cole Haan. These are companies you may have heard of before, but the interesting thing is that they wanted Convictional to add even more brands to their assortment. So we connected them with our internal sourcing team, and we're actively sourcing new brands for The September to work with, all with a goal of providing more to customers, helping The September learn more about their consumers, and then driving down the risk and costs of running a modern e-commerce company.
Yeah, and it brings up another topic I'm just thinking about now, about the whole Amazon situation. 50% of commerce is probably driven, certainly the discovery of products is certainly found on Amazon as a kind of the starting point for a lot of people, and their organic reach is huge. Let's talk about the distribution of products, because I always tell people, well, you could be upset about Amazon and the fees and all the parts that go along with it, but it's a really great discovery engine to grow your brand. So people have to be on Amazon, but in your case, instead of people being so reliant upon Amazon, like based on your experience, what sort of things would you like to tell them about? Is Amazon really evil, or can Convictional help grow your distribution?
Right. Well, the problem with these mass marketplaces is that they tend to be pretty zero sum. And so there's also another issue, which is the consumer experience. And I've shopped on Amazon recently, and I just find that it's not a great pre-purchase consumer experience, nor is it a great post-purchase consumer experience. It's actually much more enjoyable to shop on a Shopify store than it is to shop on Amazon, thanks to recent innovations from Shopify, like Shopify Pay, and enhancements to their checkout, and just the speed at which you can find a product that you want and make a checkout and leave your information in order to be contacted by that Shopify store again. But I think Shopify stores have another advantage, and I think this is actually core to the platform itself and the merchants who ultimately end up using Shopify. And this advantage is that these sellers on Shopify tend to develop passionate audiences, and they do this by telling stories. They tell stories through the products that they sell, through the stories of their businesses, and you can convey those stories in a way that's much more intimate than you can if you're just selling exclusively through mass marketplaces. So if you are a brand looking for more targeted distribution through retailers, and quite frankly, storytellers using Convictional and Shopify, then consider joining Convictional Seller Network to receive those introductions to like-minded brands who could perhaps offer a new form of distribution for your products. The benefit there for suppliers in the network is that they're able to get targeted distribution and drive incremental revenue, all while doing what they do best, which is making the product and fulfilling the orders. And so when a brand is approved for Seller Network, we instantly integrate with their Shopify store and we start vetting them for introductions to retailers who might be a good fit for them to work
That's awesome.
with.
That's all part of the whole growing and scaling kind of theme that I'm thinking about today with this particular episode, because these are topics that are definitely coming up now for me with the brands that I manage, and certainly now rolling into early 2020. So let's talk about that. What do you think Shopify stores should be working on? And are there any strategies or tactics that you believe are important for 2020 and beyond?
Absolutely. Well, I think this comes back to data, and specifically one key metric that I think every online store needs to be monitoring closely, and that metric is customer lifetime value. And the fundamental truth that I think we're seeing among so-called direct-to-consumer or digitally native vertical brands, DNVBs, is that scaling ad spend just isn't a viable long-term strategy. And so the reason people turn to mass marketplace channels like Amazon is because they can find what they need there. And so this heuristic can be applied to any Shopify store. Wouldn't it be great to expand your product offering, launch into new categories, and be able to tell your audience about new products that
Right.
you've added to your site?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's all key to driving customer lifetime value and will enable or at least incentivize those consumers to come back for repeat purchases without necessarily sinking tons of money into customer acquisition. We are seeing this strategy already being deployed by the fastest growing direct to consumer stores. And my sort of prediction for 2020 and beyond is that you'll see more direct to consumer stores partner with other direct to consumer stores in order to drive more top line and bottom line growth without necessarily reliance on Google and Facebook ads. So an example of this is Brooklinen. They're on Shopify Plus, and as far as I know, they recently partnered with 12 brands to expand into home goods. And so here's this incredible D2C store that started by manufacturing bed sheets. Now they are going to grow customer lifetime value by unlocking new categories to essentially become the digital destination for all of your home good needs. That's all enabled by working with third-party vendors and suppliers. So the lesson here is that more products means more revenue opportunities. And if you don't really know where to get started as you think about this as a potential strategy option, consider your customer and consider how their preferences might evolve over time and how you might intrigue them with adjacent categories that are core to your offering. And so we think that the best way to grow is by partnering with third-party brands and vendors, not by relying on ad
Yeah,
spend.
and I can get that part. I mean, with the rising ad costs and stuff like that, we can't just be getting first-time customers. That just doesn't work. It's how do we get the second, third, and more and become loyal? Because people will churn certainly over time, but let's figure out a way of creating this lifetime value and getting these loyal customers. And one way of doing it, as you said, is to expand your product catalog. I love the word adjacent categories. I think it's very interesting. So if you're listening in today, you have a Shopify brand, think about related products that your customers are asking about or that are complementary. And let's see if it's in the seller network, and then get connected to Convictional and then be able to add these SKUs on, certainly as a test. We'll dig into the end of the show about some opportunities we have about getting people onboarded quickly into this platform, finding products to sell, and or having your products available into that network. What about the regulated industry? You know, CBD and cannabis and edibles and things like that are a very interestingly hot commodity right now, especially, you know, Shopify being the market leading platform for having these sorts of products available. And there's such an offshoot of CBD related products from pain relief to adults. It's unbelievable the amount of things that are available. Will there be an opportunity in the future for Convictional to be involved in that sort of industry? Or is it really the same thing? If there's two different parties that want to have complementary products, would Convictional broker that deal in a regulated industry?
Absolutely, Steve. So we actually our only policy in terms of what kinds of industries we will operate in or the kinds of suppliers that we'll partner with is that the products are legal where they're being sold. So we actually see a ton of demand from brands and suppliers who are in these regulated industries to join our seller network because they know that the kinds of products that are being created in some of these industries, like CBD, for example, can actually complement other product categories that aren't regulated. So if you're a consumer, you can make regulated purchases or purchases of regulated products, but perhaps that wasn't your intention when you initially stumbled upon that Shopify store. Maybe you were just looking at general wellness products and then you saw a third-party brand offering a CBD product. That is a perfectly reasonable scenario, and Convictional would actually enable that to happen today.
That's exciting. So I'm going to make sure I have links to that in the show notes. It's not for everybody, but if it's a complementary or, as you call it, an adjacent category, good opportunity for that. So, Chris, we do have a diverse range of listeners on this show. I'm sure you can appreciate that. Are you able to give some advice for those that maybe are on the early stage in their entrepreneurial journey on Shopify? What sort of advice would you give them to help them grow and scale?
So I think the conventional advice given to an early stage e-commerce entrepreneur is typically twofold. You either have to buy inventory to start out, or you have to drop ship products from overseas suppliers and make it seem like, you can fool your consumers into purchasing them.
Yeah.
And I actually think that neither of those things are necessarily true. And it really comes down to the job of an entrepreneur. And this is to build something people want. This is the lesson that we learned when we were in Y Combinator. And this lesson applies to any business, but it's especially true for Shopify entrepreneurs. If you're buying inventory and you're just starting out, you may also want to use a time machine to predict what those shoppers want as well, because you just can't predict the future. But the reality is that entrepreneurs often fall in love with the idea of what they're going to sell and don't spend enough time talking to users or potential customers about what they actually want to buy. So a better way to launch is to offer an array of products to customers by partnering with third-party sellers and let them manage the inventory risk and fulfill orders on your behalf, and simply provide a portfolio of products from third-party brands to those consumers. That way, you can tweak some things and adapt to what the market actually wants without having to endure that capital risk of inventory, which can really be crippling as a Shopify entrepreneur and even as a large business if you do not accurately predict the future. So if you do away with inventory, then you finally have this freedom to experiment, and you can learn all about customer preferences and ultimately act on them if you do that right now. And so we're actually seeing this strategy being emulated by some of the largest online retailers globally. So if large online retailers are moving to this model, then there's no reason why early stage e-commerce entrepreneurs on Shopify can't as well.
Yeah, I know it's like quite a while ago, Best Buy did that sort of thing where they decided to allow third-party sellers things that they don't choose to have in their store. And so they're having other people having other complementary consumer electronics products available on the Best Buy website. So interesting that that's kind of where the future is headed.
Absolutely. And there's actually kind of a key distinguishment between dropship versus marketplace that we learned about. In a dropship business model, the buyer, which is the online retailer, actually records the retail price of the product as top-line revenue, and they set the retail price of the product. In a marketplace model, the third-party seller sets the price, and the revenue that's recorded for the online retailer is the commission between the retail price and the wholesale price. So we actually enable both scenarios, both business models with Convictional. It really just depends on the preferences of the buyer and the sellers that you'd like to work with.
So that's early stage. That's excellent. So at least we have some good insights about what early stage people can do about expanding their product assortment and getting involved with Convictional. Now, what about those that are listening today that would be more considered in the mid-market? So they would have a small team. They are definitely eager to grow and scale. What do you believe the executive team or the marketing team, what should they be working on?
Well, this is a good question, and it's not too dissimilar from the advice I'd give to early stage entrepreneurs. But if you have a little bit more capital to spend, it's often tempting to trade $1 for $2, or to think about how you can leverage existing customer acquisition channels that have worked previously and just double down on them because they worked in the past. My advice, though, to mid-market teams is that they will eventually hit a wall on their growth if they don't have a plan to offer more to customers. And so the temptation is just to, spin up a new supply chain, manufacture a new product line, and then repeat the scenario that has worked for you before, which is to sink more capital into ads. But if I'm an executive at a mid-size online store, I'd ask myself, is this the smartest way to grow? And so the strategy that every e-commerce executive can replicate is that the highest ROI path to growing an already established business on Shopify is simply to find third-party brands that you can partner with to sell their products on their store. Then enable them by having an automated way to sync product information and inventory and allow them to fulfill orders on your behalf. Now, to do this, executives at these mid-market to large enterprise e-commerce companies should consider building an ecosystem of curated partners who'd actually benefit from that handshake. Those sellers would benefit from having their products distributed to the audience of the D2C brand, and the D2C brand would benefit by having a potentially higher AOV and customer lifetime value. And I think this is what companies like Brooklinen and The Helm have done well in order to grow more profitably. There's data that supports that this is actually highly profitable for the online retailers if they execute on this well. And online retailers using Convictional are typically driving margins anywhere between 20 to 50% with no inventory costs, fast shipping times that they can promise customers, and an ability to enable and rapidly expand their product catalog. So Walmart, Staples, Best Buy, all of the big players rely on this model to compete. And what's striking to us is that Amazon is spending $15 billion alone this year on third-party seller enablement. So if you want to catch up, then Convictional might be your best bet.
Definitely. And I have quite a few multi-brand retailers that I manage, and it sounds like I'm going to have some really interesting conversations in 2020 now. They have a multi-brand contract, so they're selling very unique products that are individual to the URL and the content strategy they're doing. But it sounds like it would be very interesting to have their primary brand kind of roll up, because the products are quite complementary, but they've chosen to have them very unique on their own top-level domains, and that's how they're marketing them. And they all have their own marketing strategy and budgets and things that go along with it, which is maybe okay as part of that's one strategy. But maybe the other option is they should consider rolling up a lot of these products into their primary store, more of a discovery engine.
Absolutely. And if you're an executive at one of these mid-market to large enterprise retailers, you don't have to have all of the answers. And what's interesting is you may not even think that this is possible for your business. But with a platform like Convictional and the human expertise that we wrap around the platform to help you source and better onboard third-party vendors, it's surprising how fast you can move without necessarily having these relationships already, an IT team in-house. And that's all driven by this goal of making it easier for buyers and sellers to work together so those buyers can offer more products to the end customer. So we're here to help with that challenge, and we look forward to it.
Perfect. So what does the future look like for Convictional? Can you share some highlights maybe for the 2020 roadmap, any partner alignment? Just end of the day, how are you helping Shopify brands?
So I'll start with the vision. And the vision behind Convictional is to enable the B2B graph. So the B2B graph is basically this real world connectivity of all business relationships that exists in the world. And if you think about it, the B2B graph already exists. It's just invisible. And so we want to enable more trade and to bring the B2B graph into visibility by creating this modern trade enablement network. And we're doing that today by connecting brands to online retailers. Now, this is a big undertaking. The B2B graph doesn't just happen overnight. So over time, we'll enable more forms of trade to the network so suppliers can onboard virtually all of their B2B trading partners to Convictional, and we'll do lots of work to make that happen. We're continuing to build on our partnership with Shopify and Shopify Plus. We believe that every online store can benefit from a platform like Convictional, whether you would like to join our seller network or if you would like to sell products from third-party vendors. We have a solution for all of them. And as far as what I'm going to be working on in 2020 on the non-technical side, I'm going to be building up a partner program. Today, we're already working with a number of top Shopify Plus partners to help their clients drive more revenue, expand their product assortment, and really make them more successful through the platform offering. We have some other moonshot projects in the works, but one I can talk about now is that we'll be adding a financing option for sellers and online stores in the network to help them better manage their cash flow. But maybe we can talk about that and do a round two on e-commerce Fastlane once we're going live with it.
Oh, beautiful. Definitely. I'll note that down. I've been scrambling down so many notes today. Life of learning, and it's awesome. Really excited to share this opportunity to those listening today. We are nearing the end of the show. We could talk for, we're 40 some minutes into it now, but we could talk probably for hours about this. It's such an exciting time of the year. But can you give us some closing comments or any takeaways basically that you would like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, I think the closing takeaway would be to build something that people want and consider how you can do that by partnering with third-party brands and suppliers who can help you diversify your assortment, launch and test new categories, and really become the one-stop shop for everything your customer needs. This is all possible today on Shopify and Shopify Plus with Convictional. You don't need to open a new warehouse. You don't need to buy inventory or subject you and your IT team to manual effort. You just need to get started with us, and we can definitely make that happen.
So how can people learn more about the Convictional solution?
Absolutely. So you can find us at convictional.com. We're so happy to be on the show today. And so if you are a Shopify brand listening to this and you want targeted distribution for your products, you can join Convictional Seller Network without any fixed or monthly fees, simply by mentioning that you heard us on e-commerce Fastlane. To take advantage of that offer, visit ecommercefastlane.com/convictional to join our seller network with this promotion. And just mention that you heard about us through e-commerce Fastlane and we'll hook you up.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that will be in the show notes and that will redirect to your landing page. You can also get a hold of Chris directly if you have some questions. I think he's I assume you're very open to wanting to chat and discuss about becoming a seller or if you're a brand liking to expand your product selection. Chris at convictional.com. This will all be in the show notes for sure. Once again, Chris, I really massively appreciate you coming on the show today. I'm very excited for 2020 and how this is a very, very unique solution that I guarantee you most people have never heard of it. They're, in my opinion, should be extremely excited to get their products either one, into your seller network, or number two, learn about finding ways of, as you mentioned, like complementary products or adjacent categories. Figuring out over this holiday season, after you're listening to this episode, think about products that you wish you could sell on your store, and likely either currently it's in the seller network or emailing Chris and his team, they'll help you source these particular brands to help complement what you're currently doing. So massively exciting. Once again, Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
This episode is supported by Caro, an incredible Shopify app that discovers all the influencers, press, and media that already love your brand. They can be customers, email subscribers, or fans, and Caro will reveal the social footprint and influence of those that have already shown you some love. And from there, Caro makes it easy to work with influencers, communicate, and distribute products to them so you can pick the right influencers and create meaningful partnerships. To get started, you can visit getcaro.com or search for Caro in the Shopify App Store. That's Carro, and discover which influencers already love your brand. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you, a loyal listener of e-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms. all with my personal goal to help you build, launch, grow, and scale with Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.